Hey and welcome to Not Only Hollywood. Today I'm going to review I Saw the Devil from 2010. This is a South Korean thriller. A serial killer kills a pregnant woman who turns out to be the fiancé of a trained agent with an amazing body. The agent decides to take revenge, a slow revenge in which he constantly tortures the serial killer and then releases him. How long will this game last? Just so you know, Kim Ji-woon is my favorite movie director. I have seen I Saw the Devil 3 times, and I remember when it came out that everyone talked about the violence. I also remember I was looking forward to seeing the violence, but when Kim Ji-woon is my favorite director, I expect a little extra. We get to see in some scenes why he is regarded to be one of the best directors in the world. Few can do the things he does with a camera. He's amazing with a camera. He's so creative. I Saw the Devil has 2 amazing scenes, and that's the greenhouse scene and taxi scene. But beyond that, the violence is not that graphic. I just don't understand why so many say that this is a brutal and graphic movie. It's more interesting to watch the agent transform into a monster he doesn't want to be, but the monster in him takes over.
It's time for revenge.
It's so much more about violence. It's about the agent who becomes a monster, a man who plays with the devil and who has to pay the price. Although the violence is not as brutal and graphic as I expected, I still felt dirty and quite tired when the poor, sick serial killer is constantly beaten and tortured by the handsome agent. Oh, he's so handsome. But the atmosphere never gets dark enough. It's too much black humor here that destroys the realism and tension for me. For my taste, Kim Ji-woon should have made a more dark movie without a touch of humor. And that comes from a man who loves dark humor and Takashi Miike. The movie is dark in the first 30 to 40 minutes, but then the tone and atmosphere change when the handsome... Oh my god, he's so handsome. When the handsome agent finds the serial killer who killed his fiancée. It's the violence that so many have talked about that was sort of the selling point. But I think people exaggerated. An iron bar or a lead pipe in the skull looks really painful when the blood is squirting out. But many of the other scenes that people talk about aren't so much to talk about in my world. And this says a guy who almost faints when I see my own blood. The depiction of violence in Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is much cruder and raw in my eyes. Sometimes what you don't see can be worse than what you see. My problem with I Saw the Devil is that the critics and viewers talked so much about the violence. Oh, the violence, oh, the violence, oh. So I expected a new Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance when I saw the movie for the first time. Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance also has dark humor, but the violence there is more difficult to look at, though it's not as graphic as in I Saw the Devil. It's fun to see close-ups of the violence and see the damage the violence does to a human body. But as brutal and graphic as many say it is, it's just not. It gets a little too wild in the long run, so the realism disappears. Poof. Lee Byung-hun is good in the role of the agent who is looking for revenge. But I always feel when I watch the movie that his character could have been written a little better. You see a character development here, where he almost transforms into a bigger monster than the devil himself in this movie. which is interesting. But it also feels like he is an invincible robot on a mission, something that kills the suspense. Choi Min-sik is great as usual. I think he's the best South Korean actor. Yeah, better than Kang Ho-sung. He shows such wonderful evilness that it's almost impossible to believe that a man can be so evil. Jesus. His role interpretation is one of the best I've seen in a serial killer movie. And together with the transformation of the protagonist, his character is the soul of the movie. It's the actions he does that makes him so interesting. He's the most interesting part of the movie. What an evil bastard. I loved him, something I shouldn't do. But it tells you something about the movie, doesn't it? I Saw the Devil is not a movie for everyone. Those who have seen some movies from South Korea know how raw and brutal they can be. So I don't think anyone will be disappointed with the movie if you're looking for a gritty and brutal movie. But just lower your expectations and don't just think of graphic violence when watching the movie. Watch the transformation of the protagonist, see the consequences it has when he plays with the devil. And yes, he really plays with the devil. From 1 to 10, I give I Saw the Devil 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.